The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube. All on our Patreon. The breathing is the first thing. It always is. In, mechanical compression. Out, mechanical release. The rhythm of a man kept alive by engineering, 12 times per minute, every minute, for 19 years. The rhythm does not vary. It does not quicken with anticipation or slow with boredom. It is a metronome, and the metronome has been set. And the metronome does not care about the rebel ship being hauled into the Devastator's docking bay like a splinter being pulled from skin. Darth Vader watches through the viewport as the boarding clamps engage. The Tantive 4 is CR-90 class, diplomatic registry, running House Alderaan colors. This is the 11th intercept of this classification this cycle. He catalogs it the way he catalogs weather, present, relevant, requiring action, carrying no more weight than weather does. He reaches out through the Force as a matter of operational habit. The ship's personnel register in succession, 34 signatures, most of them civilian-grade fear, the specific quality of people who believe they might die in the next hour and are trying not to let that belief arrive in their faces. One signature burns colder than the rest. Disciplined, young, holding something closed that wants to open. He notes it. Files it as a standard high-value political asset, trained to resist basic interrogation. He will deal with it after the boarding. The clamps engage with a sound that reaches him through 2 hulls and 20 meters of corridor. Deep percussion, magnetic lock seizing, the specific finality of a vessel that is no longer going anywhere it has not been directed to go. He moves toward the docking bay. The Tantive Force crew fight the way men fight when they know the fight is already lost. Loudly, briefly, with the particular anger that belongs to people buying time for something that matters more than they do. The stormtroopers push through them with the efficiency of men who have done this before, and the corridor fills with blaster fire and smoke and the smell of burned polymer. Vader walks through it. The bolts that come near him don't require his attention. His hand moves before the cognizant part of him processes them, deflecting each shot with the Force the way a man blinks against wind. Reflexive, automatic, requiring nothing from the part of him currently thinking about the Death Star's position and Tarkin's timetable and whether the primary interrogation bay has been adequately cleared. Captain Antilles meets him in the corridor. Vader knows his rank by his posture before he reads the insignia. The man plants himself the way men plant themselves when they have decided this is where they stop, which Vader respects the way he respects most acts of structural stupidity, as information about the person in front of him rather than as a meaningful obstacle. The captain says something about the Senate, about diplomatic sanctity, about crimes. Vader lifts him by the throat. It takes 11 seconds. He does not enjoy it. He does not enjoy it. The man's feet leave the floor and then the man is finished, and Vader sets him down without ceremony and moves on. She is in the corridor near the escape pod bay. That detail registers and matters. She was trying to get something out. He makes a note to locate whatever she transmitted before any further interrogation begins. She is young. This registers only as data. Early 20s, a senator's bearing, wearing it the way people wear clothing they grew up in, not consciously, but structurally. Her hands are empty. Her eyes track him with an attention that is not fear. Not yet. Fear is the secondary reaction, the primary one is calculation, and he can see her running it even now, even standing in a corridor that smells of ozone and her crew's blood. "I don't know what you're talking about," she says. Her voice carries the trained quality of someone who has given speeches in large rooms and learned what resonance does to authority. "I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan." She controls the first 4 words flawlessly. The word diplomatic shakes by half a degree, so close to nothing that anyone not listening at the frequency Vader listens at would miss it entirely. He catalogs the shake as irrelevant. "You are a part of the Rebel Alliance," he says, "and a traitor." Then, to the escort, "Take her away." He is already thinking about the plans. The interrogation chamber is functional, without personality. The Itto droid waits at its center in the attitude of something that has learned patience from its function, unhurried, floating on its repulsor field, emitting a soft and continuous hum at a frequency engineered to be almost warm. Almost the way a sound can approximate comfort without committing to it. A technical achievement in the sustained production of dread. Vader stands at the chamber's edge. He is, if he is being precise with himself, primarily thinking about logistics. The Death Star's position. The gap in the hyperspace route where the plans might have been redirected. The 4 most likely rebel relay points between Tatooine and whatever base they are currently pretending doesn't exist. The prisoner is restrained in the chair at the chamber center. The Itto droid extends the needle. And then, it does not arrive as anything he has words for. That is the first fact. There are no words available, none developed to describe this specific event, because this event has never happened before. It arrives as sensation. Specifically, it arrives as the sensation, cellular, total, bypassing every rational system at once, of a frequency he spent 23 years memorizing and 19 years refusing to hear. Not sound, not sight. The force equivalent of something entering through the part of the mind that does not negotiate, the specific quality of light through water on white stone, a latitude of warmth that did not originate from any heat source he can name, the exact impression of a presence that once organized itself around him in the Force, bond the way water organizes itself around a stone. Specific, unrepeatable, hers it is not Padam. He knows this with the same certainty he knows everything he cannot afford to know. She is dead. He killed her. He has spent 19 years building his existence on that fact, on the particular texture of that specific absence, on the way her Force shape has been silent for so long that silence has become her only form. This is not Padam. But it is, God, it is, the shape she made, the harmonic of her, the frequency of her, imprinted on living tissue, running through a young woman's terror like a second voice in a chord he thought he would never hear again. And underneath it, threading through it, unmistakable, the other frequency. The one he recognizes the way a man recognizes his own heartbeat even when a machine is doing the work. His, coming back to him from across this room, from someone young and burning with fear and fury on the other side of a needle that is about to reach her eye. The deduction is not what happens. Deduction is too slow, too rational, too interested in the movement of thought from point to point. What happens is not a thought. What happens is more like gravity. Directional, immediate, not requiring permission. His breathing hitches. One break. In 12 per minute, 19 years, one break in the rhythm. Mechanical and involuntary. A single hiccup in the metronome that has been set since Mustafar. The Itto droid does not explode. It simply stops being a functional object. Parts scatter across the floor in the absence of any visible force, and the nurse droid in the corner begins broadcasting alarm codes to a room that has gone absolutely still. Vader stands very still. The only sound is his breathing, returned to its rhythm. In and out, 12 times per minute, giving nothing. She stares at the scattered pieces of the droid. Then she looks at him. She is shaking. She does not know she is shaking, because every resource she has is engaged in a different project. Her eyes have not stopped moving, cataloging the room, cataloging him, cataloging exits and distances and angles, with the precise attention of a woman who learned that attention was the only weapon she never had to put down. She looks like both of them. This lands in Vader's chest with the blunt specificity of structural damage. The eyes, dark, furious, the exact quality of fury held in reserve that he knew from a different face at a different time. The jaw, the way she inhabits defiance as if it is load-bearing, as if removing it would cause the whole architecture to come down. She looks like both of them, and she is 19 years old, and he has spent 19 years not knowing. He does not speak immediately. His breathing fills the chamber, fills it, and fills it. She does not look away. When he speaks, it comes out quiet enough that the mechanical amplification of his mask almost swallows it. What is your name? Not senator, not prisoner, not rebel. Her name. She stares at him for a moment that carries too much weight for its length. Leia, she says. Her voice does not shake this time. Leia Organa. She does not know why she answered honestly. He does. He studies her face, permits himself exactly as long as it takes to confirm what he already knows, which is longer than it should be. Then he turns to the stormtrooper escort at the chamber's entrance. His voice returns to its command register. Something underneath it has shifted, a pressure difference, immeasurably slight, the kind of change only the Force could measure in a machine built to feel nothing. "Return the senator to her cell," he says. "No further interrogation protocols." The stormtrooper's hesitation is exactly 2 seconds. "Lord Vader, Grand Moff Tarkin's standing orders specifically require." Vader's fist closes. Not around anything. Not directed at anything. A reminder of the distance between what someone's standing orders require and what is physically possible in this corridor. "My orders supersede." He turns and walks. His breathing fills the corridor ahead of him. 12 times per minute. As it has always been. Behind him, in the chamber she was supposed to break in, Senator Leia Organa of the House of Alderaan looks at the pieces of the droid that was supposed to do the breaking, and begins, carefully, methodically, without any of the emotions she will deal with later, to calculate. The cell door opens without announcement. No alarm. No stormtroopers reading from orders. No officer with a datapad and a transfer code. Just the door, sliding back, and the corridor lights at a level she immediately clocks as wrong, approximately 60% standard, which means either a maintenance cycle or a monitoring gap. She has been cataloging the rhythm of the standard lights since they brought her here. This is not the maintenance cycle. He fills the doorframe. She runs the calculation in approximately the time it takes most people to blink. No weapons, no allies within any distance that matters, no intelligence on the station's layout beyond what she memorized from the engineering schematics the Alliance lifted 18 months ago. And those were incomplete. The floor plan she has in her head does not match what she has observed through this corridor's sightlines. Someone modified the detention level after the original construction. Following him costs her nothing she currently has. She follows. The maintenance corridor runs parallel to the primary turbolift shaft. She knows this because she can feel the electromagnetic vibration of the lifts through the grating beneath her boots, a specific frequency, rhythmic, slightly off cycle from what you'd expect in a military installation running at full capacity. They are below the standard security sweep. The surveillance panels she passes are on a different grid from the detention level's cameras. She registers this the way she registers anything that might be useful later, which is to say immediately and without announcement. The air carries the recycled flatness of a closed system with no atmosphere to borrow from. Coolant, polymer sealant. Faintly, ozone from the power conduits running through the walls. The reactor is somewhere below them, not a sound exactly. More pressure in the floor, a distant and enormous thrumming that the station's structure has learned to carry without registering as vibration. Vader does not speak. He does not look back to confirm she is following. This is not arrogance. It is a specific kind of certainty, the certainty of someone who has spent decades being the thing in a room that nothing runs from. She catalogs it as operational data. She uses the walk to memorize the route. The chamber seals behind her with a sound she has never heard before, not the mechanical percussion of blast doors or the magnetic click of cell locks, but something more deliberate. A pressurized compression, air being brought to a specific density, the sound of an environment being made self-contained. A hyperbaric seal. She identifies it immediately and understands what it means and why, and this tells her something about the extent of his injuries that the armor's silhouette had suggested but not confirmed. The room is not large. It should feel larger, a space designed for someone of his size and authority, but instead it reads as compressed. Intimate in a way that has nothing to do with comfort. The life support pod stands open and inert against the far wall. Personal communications equipment, a meditation alcove that carries the particular quality of a place that actually gets used, a room that belongs, entirely and without compromise, to one person. She is still cataloging exit routes when he reaches up and removes his helmet. She does not look away. She catalogs what she sees the way she catalogs damaged infrastructure. First, what is still standing. Second, what it will take to function with what remains. The damage is extensive and old, the kind of old that means lived with, adapted to, made workable through accumulated practice rather than healing. His face carries the record of a burning that went deep and was not treated quickly enough. His eyes are pale. He does not blink with the frequency of someone who finds exposure comfortable. She does not see a monster. She does not see a father. She sees a man who was destroyed to the structural level and kept operating anyway, because the alternative was stopping. And stopping was not something the thing inside him was willing to do. She has met men like this before, in Senate chambers and relief stations and the aftermath of imperial campaigns, and she knows that the most dangerous thing about them is never the damage. It is the discipline that survived it. He sets the helmet down. He looks at her. She looks back. He does not approach this gently. She will give him that much. He does not try. He says it with the directness of someone who has spent time considering how this sentence would land and concluded that there is no configuration of words that softens the impact, so precision will have to substitute for grace. Before he speaks, he does something she can only partially perceive, a stillness within the stillness, a reaching outward quality, the specific quality of someone extending attention past the room. It lasts approximately 4 seconds. When it ends, his focus returns to her, and something in the set of his jaw has shifted in a way that has nothing to do with this room or her or what he is about to say. It carries the specific weight of a conclusion that has just been confirmed. She will understand what that 4 seconds meant after he tells her the rest. He tells her about her mother first. The name Padma Amidala, senator of Naboo, later a senatorial voice of opposition inside a chamber that was already failing to stop what was coming. He tells her she was extraordinary. He says this without sentimentality, the way a person states a structural fact about a building that no longer exists. He tells her about the war, the Clone Wars, which she knows the way everyone who was alive during them knows it, as the period that explains the shape of everything that followed, the given, the sky. He tells her what was underneath it, what built it, who built it, and from what materials, and toward what end. He tells her about the lie. He tells her she has a brother she has never met, that her father, Bail Organa, the man she grew up calling father, the man she has never once had reason to doubt, kept her hidden for 19 years because the alternative was her being used as a weapon against someone she had never been allowed to know existed. When he reached through the Force 2 hours ago, he tells her, and felt the Skywalker bloodline in her, his frequency, his children's frequency, he reached further. And there was another, somewhere in the outer rim, faint and distant, the same harmonic running through a different body. 2 children. Both hidden, both alive. He tells her what she is to him. Leia's eyes go very still. Not the stillness of shock, though she will examine that later, alone in whatever room they put her in, and she will let herself be thorough about it. This is the other stillness. The one she developed at 14, when she first sat in the full Senate and understood that the men and women in those pods had shaped 25 million worlds and most of them were lying about what they wanted. The stillness of someone processing at a speed the face cannot keep up with and has long since learned not to try. She asks one question. Where is Alderaan on the station's target list? Something moves in his face. Barely. The kind of movement that happens in a structure not built for movement. He tells her it is the first demonstration. The word demonstration sits in the room between them. She lets it. She stands. She crosses the chamber. She stops when she is closer to him than anyone voluntarily stands, and she is aware that this is deliberate, and that it is in some clinical sense the most dangerous position in the room, and she does it anyway, because she knows something about power that most people don't learn until it is too late. Proximity is not the same as surrender. She has stood closer to worse men than this in chambers with better security, and survived every one of them by not flinching first. She is not warm. She is not forgiving. She does not perform a softness she has never had, and would not waste here even if she did. You don't get to tell me what I am to you, she says, and then ask me what that means to you. That's not how this works. The Senator's Register, the voice she built for rooms where the wrong tone costs lives. You owe me an entire planet. You have a weapon pointed at everyone I have ever loved. You want something from me. Information, cooperation, whatever your plan is, you start by saving Alderaan. That is the cost of this conversation continuing. The breathing fills the chamber. In and out, 12 times per minute. A long pause that is not hesitation, she decides, not weakness, not grief, but calculation. The same process she just ran, moving in a different direction. And after Alderaan, she meets his pale eyes. She does not look away from the damage in his face or the enormity of what he has just handed her or the 19 years of absence carried inside it. She files all of it, precisely in the part of herself where she keeps things she will need later. After Alderaan, Leia says, "We talk about what happens to the man who built the weapon." The report arrives at 0314 station time, routed through the secondary monitoring system with a priority flag that Tarkin has set to wake him for exactly 3 categories of event: unauthorized weapons discharge, unauthorized hyperspace calculation, and missing high-value assets. He reads it once. Detention Level 5, Cell Block AA-23, Occupancy Breach. Primary Sensor, negative. Secondary Sensor, negative. Manual Verification, Asset Absent. He does not read it twice. Tarkin has made a practice of understanding things the first time. His first response is controlled irritation, which is where most of his responses begin. The prisoner was a political complication from the moment she was brought aboard. A senator, technically, which meant paperwork and imperial legal and the specific tedium of watching the Emperor's machinery process something that should have been an operational decision. Interrogation protocols exist for a reason. The droid should have done its work. Whatever disrupted that process will be identified and corrected. He begins composing the correction order. Then, the security sweep returns its second negative, and the maintenance corridor flag appears on the secondary grid, a flag that would not normally reach his level, a flag from a system that runs below the standard sweep cycle, and the controlled irritation undergoes a transformation into something colder and considerably more attentive. He has spent the better part of a decade managing Lord Vader. He has managed him successfully by maintaining 2 fictions, both useful, both mutually reinforcing. The first, that Vader's power requires the structure of command authority to function. The second, that Tarkin provides that structure, and therefore holds a form of the leash. A maintenance corridor that runs below the standard sweep cycle is not something an asset accesses without planning. He reaches for the command channel. The command channel goes unanswered. He tries twice. Standard military protocol allows for a 3-second window. He extends it to 30 out of what he will later categorize as professional courtesy. The channel returns nothing. Not static. Not a delay. Nothing. In the specific quality of a frequency being declined. Tarkin sets down the comlink with the particular care of a man recalibrating. He has had 20 years of working in proximity to the Emperor's instruments. He is not a man who panics. He is a man who assesses, revises his operational model, and acts on the revision with minimum necessary force. This is the methodology that built his career, and it has not yet failed him. He proceeds to the overbridge. The overbridge at this hour carries only its skeleton crew. 4 officers, 2 technicians at the tactical arrays, the Night Watch commander who straightens when Tarkin enters with the visible effort of a man who has been awake too long and knows better than to show it. The Alderaan firing solution has been loaded since 2100 station time. The calculation is complete. The sequence is ready. He inputs his authorization code. The system begins to charge. He watches the tactical display as the harmonic builds in the firing relay, a rising tone that the room's speakers translate into a layered and increasing pressure. Something that starts below hearing and climbs through it, the sound of an energy accumulation so large that the station's own structure must be calibrated to carry it without resonating. It is not a comfortable sound. It was not designed to be. It is the sound of something built to be terrible, being made ready. He does not intend to fire. The prisoner's location is a secondary question. The weapon is the point. Command authority over the station's primary weapon is the clearest possible statement of what remains intact. He is 3 minutes from completion when the weapons officer reports from his station at the firing relay terminal, Grand Moff, I'm reading. The superlaser control room is offline. Tarkin turns. That is not possible. Sir. The man's hands move across his console with the efficiency of someone who knows that saying "I don't understand what happened to this particular Grand Moff" is a career-ending event. I have no read from the primary relay. The targeting system is dark. I'm not receiving confirmation from... I heard you, Tarkin says. He already knows where he is going. The superlaser control room is 2 decks below the overbridge, separated by a secured turbolift and a pressure door that requires weapons officer clearance to open. The pressure door is open when Tarkin arrives. In the original history, Tarkin says, "You may fire when ready." He means it. He fires it again, against Yavin, without hesitation. In the original history, the Death Star is the instrument of the man who commands it. Tonight he is learning that instruments can have other masters. The 2 officers he assigned to maintain the firing solution are on the floor. They are not breathing. Lord Vader stands in the center of the room. The targeting computer's central relay is dark, not damaged, not sparking, not the result of mechanical failure. Dark in the specific quality of a system that has been interfaced with and ended. The screen blank and without standby indicators, as if the thing itself has decided to be finished. The room is otherwise undisturbed. No scorch marks, no physical alteration of any surface. Nothing to indicate that anything catastrophic occurred here except for the 2 men on the floor and the targeting system that will not as of this moment be killing anyone. Tarkin enters the room. He looks at his officers. He looks at the targeting system. He looks at Vader. "You have committed treason against the Empire," he says. His voice carries the register he uses when he wants someone to understand that what he is saying is categorization, not threat. "You have murdered Imperial officers. You have interfered with the primary strategic operation of this installation. I will have you. You will do nothing." Vader does not raise his voice. He never raises his voice. The mechanical amplification of the mask does not require it, and the practice of 20 years has made volume irrelevant. The sentence occupies the room the way the breathing occupies every room, as a fact of the environment rather than an act of will. "The Emperor's authority supersedes your command of this installation," Tarkin says. He is not afraid of Vader. He reminds himself of this because it is operationally true, and he intends to keep it that way. "You have just used that authority in direct contravention of the Emperor's stated." "The prisoner," Vader says, "is not a rebel senator." Tarkin stops. He is a man who has built his career on models, of people, of systems, of power structures, and used those models to stay precisely 1 step ahead of events. He builds a model in the silence that follows, quickly with the available data: a missing prisoner, a disarmed superlaser, 2 dead weapons officers, and Lord Vader standing in the dark of a room he had no authorized access to, telling him that the political detainee in cell block A-23 is something other than what her file states. Enough data exists in that model to make the next question. He asks it, "What is she?" "A political fact," Vader says, "that changes the structure of everything you thought you understood about this station's operational authority. You have been told what you needed to know. You will not be told more tonight." Once. Without repetition. The way a man delivers information he does not intend to discuss. Tarkin looks at him. He allows himself, for the first time in their professional relationship, to look at Vader without the frame of the model, without the useful fictions. He looks at a man who has operated for 20 years within the constraints of command authority with a consistency Tarkin has always read as structural, as something intrinsic, something Vader required, the leash theory, the management methodology. He is looking at it differently now. He looks at 2 officers who moved to reactivate a system and were stopped in the time it takes to register an intention and are no longer in a condition to be managed by anyone. He looks at a targeting system neutralized with a precision that left every surrounding surface untouched. He looks at Vader, standing in a room he entered before Tarkin knew he needed to be stopped, having done everything necessary before the opposition arrived. "You've been leashing yourself," Tarkin says. A pause. "Yes." The word sits in the room. 1 syllable. The confirmation of an architecture Tarkin built his entire working relationship on, and which he now understands, with the specific clarity of a man who is very good at being wrong precisely once, was never the structure he believed it was. The leash was decorative. It was always decorative. Vader was choosing to wear it, and the choosing is done. He looks at the dark targeting screen, at his officers, at the firing solution that is no longer a firing solution, at the political entity in the upper hemisphere of this station that has, in the course of one night, decided to stop performing its designated function. How inconvenient, Tarkin says for everyone. He does not move toward the exit. He does not reach for a weapon. He is not a man who makes operational gestures in conditions where they cannot succeed, and these conditions are clearly such conditions. He stands, and he thinks, and he begins already, because this is what he does, building the next model. The moons of Alderaan are setting. Bail Organa stands on the palace terrace in the hour before dawn, the way he sometimes does when the Senate session has left him with too many things he cannot say aloud in any room that matters. The city below is quiet. The sky is the particular deep blue that exists for approximately 40 minutes each morning, and then is gone. A routine atmospheric monitoring satellite blinks offline on the palace's secondary display. It holds for 11 seconds. Then it recovers, quietly, and resumes its standard transmission. Bail notes the irregularity the way he notes most irregularities without obvious explanation, as something to check in the morning when there is daylight for it. He goes inside. The moons continue to set. On a moon of Yavin, in an Alliance signal station, buried under 3 meters of jungle root and hardened polymer shielding. An operator named Thalia Morn is 40 minutes from the end of her shift when the Death Star's firing cycle registers on her board. She watches it build. She has watched it build in simulations. She knows the harmonic signature exactly, what the superlaser looks like when it is being brought to charge. She watches it stop. She flags it. She writes, DS1 firing cycle initiated, 0317, cycle aborted, 031, cause unknown. Recommend escalation. She routes it to her supervisor and returns to monitoring frequencies that are mostly static at this hour. She does not know what it means. No one does. Not yet. The thing about hyperspace is that it gives you time to think. And Luke Skywalker has had approximately 17 hours of it and has not found any of them useful. He knows the following. 3 days ago he was on Tatooine. 2 days ago his family was dead. Somewhere between those 2 points, an astromech droid arrived at a hermit's house in the Junlan wastes with a message that changed the shape of everything. And since then he has been moving at the specific velocity of someone who is not sure what he is moving toward, but is very certain about what he is moving away from. What he does not know is considerably more. He does not know why Obi-Wan went quiet on the flight deck 40 minutes ago. He does not know what is in the secondary transmission that R2 flagged as separate from the rebel orders. A cipher, Obi-Wan said, and then stopped talking for a long time. He does not know why Alderaan still exists when the Death Star has been in its system for the better part of a day, which is either good news or the kind of situation where the good news is temporary and requires explanation. He is, at 19 years old, doing the best he can with what he has. Obi-Wan comes to find him in the cargo hold. He carries the transmission on a datapad and sets it on the crate between them, and does not immediately explain it, which Luke has begun to understand is how Obi-Wan Kenobi approaches most things. He gives you the object first, and the interpretation second, and watches to see if you come to it yourself. Luke looks at the decoded text. He does not understand the language. The notation style alone is old, something that belongs in a historical archive rather than a current operational channel. What is it? Luke asks. It is a request, Obi-Wan says. In a cipher that has not been used since the Clone Wars, in a cipher that only 2 people ever used, and one of them has been dead for 19 years. He pauses. It was embedded in R2's secondary communication buffer, inserted during the boarding of the Tantive 4th, before whatever happened in that interrogation chamber changed the situation. He sent it before he knew what he would find. A contingency, or something older than a contingency. Luke looks at him. This is not a trap. Obi-Wan says it with the quietness of a man who has been sitting with this conclusion for 40 minutes and is still not entirely comfortable with it. A trap does not waste Old Republic ciphers on us. This is a request. From the cockpit, Han Solo's voice carries back with the unerring accuracy of a man whose hearing is professionally calibrated toward conversations being had just out of earshot. I caught Old Republic cipher and request, and I have several concerns I'd like to register at this time. Luke calls back. What concerns? Han leans around the cockpit doorframe. His expression is the specific expression of a man who has run the odds and found them philosophically offensive. A request from Darth Vader. Great. Does he want us to walk into the giant space cannon voluntarily, or is there a form to fill out first? Chewie, from the pilot's seat, voices an opinion at a frequency that makes Han briefly close his eyes. Luke asks the only question that matters. Is Leia alive? Yes. A pause that carries more weight than its length should allow. And she is not in the position we thought she was. The stars streak past the viewport. Luke watches them and thinks about what position might mean in this context, and does not arrive at any answer that makes the next hour feel manageable. He goes back to the cargo hold and holds the practice saber Obi-Wan gave him and breathes the way Obi-Wan showed him, and he tells himself that the Force does not bring people to places without reason. He tries to believe it. In the original history, he comes to rescue her with a plan that barely holds together, a disguise that barely holds together. And Han Solo, who doesn't believe in any of it but comes anyway. He comes because Obi-Wan dies so they can escape, and that death becomes the fuel for everything that follows. Tonight, nobody dies. The rescue mission has already been made obsolete by something none of them understand yet. The docking bay is enormous. Luke has never been inside anything this large that was also inside something else. The scale registers first as architecture and then, incrementally as threat. The ceiling is 30 meters overhead. The blast doors ceiling behind the Falcon are the size of a city block, and the bay lighting has the quality of a facility designed by people who thought about function before they thought about anything else, and never went back to reconsider. The 501st are assembled in a perimeter around the landing area. White armor. Weapons at their sides, not raised, not trained on anything, not pointed at anything. This is the detail that stops Han's hand before his blaster clears the holster. Luke registers the same detail, not because it makes him feel safe, but because it changes the calculation. And he has been doing enough calculating today to recognize when a variable shifts. He descends the ramp. He sees her before anything else. She is standing approximately 30 meters across the bay, and she is not in restraints, and she is not being held at a weapons point, and she is not performing any of the things that prisoners perform when they are brought before an enemy to demonstrate that they understand their position. She is standing with her shoulders level and her chin at the angle of someone who decided, at some point in the hours before this moment, exactly how she was going to hold herself in this bay, and has not reconsidered since. Beside her stands the largest armored figure Luke has ever seen, outside of the stories people told on Tatooine to explain certain sounds that came out of the dark on certain nights. The sound enters the bay before the figure steps forward. Mechanical, rhythmic, pressurized. A metronome that has been set at a specific tempo and does not vary. Luke's chest does something complicated in response to it. He has spent his whole life being told what that sound means. Leia meets his eyes across the 30 meters of industrial flooring between them. Her face does not say help me. It does not say run. It carries, with a precision that he will spend a long time understanding, the specific expression of someone who has had hours to account for the variables and has arrived at a set of instructions and is transmitting them without words because words would take too long. Do not run. Do not shoot. Not yet. Luke processes this. He breathes. He centers himself the way Obi-Wan showed him, the way the Force shows you things when you stop demanding that it explain itself first. Behind him, 2 millimeters of blaster-clearing leather. Then stopping. Han Solo, to no one in particular, very quietly. Okay. Vader steps forward. Obi-Wan steps forward at the same instant, from the ramp behind Luke, and the quality of that simultaneity. The way two people who have been tracking each other across a space can move without coordination and still move together tells Luke something he doesn't yet have language for. He watches Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is not reaching for his lightsaber. He has not assumed any position that Luke would recognize as preparation for a fight. What he is doing is something Luke has not seen on that face before, in the short time he has known it, not the calm of a man prepared for what's arriving, but the specific expression of someone who made choices a long time ago that cannot be taken back, and is now standing in a room with every consequence of those choices, in the flesh, at a distance of 15 meters. And is finding this exactly as difficult as it deserves to be. He is looking at Vader the way you look at something you made with your own hands, and then had to watch become something else. Vader stops. Obi-Wan. Just that. Not the title, not the designation, the name, delivered in the mechanical register of the mask, which ought to strip the word of intimacy, and doesn't. The docking bay holds it. The stormtroopers don't move. The 501st stands in its perimeter with weapons at rest, and in the middle of all of it, that one word sits in the recycled air. Obi-Wan is quiet for a moment that is not long and carries an enormous amount of weight. Anakin. The birth name. In front of the stormtroopers, in front of Han Solo, who has gone completely still in the way that men go still when they understand they are witnessing something they have no frame of reference for and no protocol to handle. In front of the docking bay's industrial lighting that doesn't care about any of it, and never will. Luke looks at Obi-Wan saying Anakin, and looks at the black armored shape across the bay, and feels the Force do something he has no technique for yet. Not a vision, not a sound, but a specific quality of recognition, like a chord resolving, like something that was always going to land on this note finally landing. He looks at Leia. She is already looking at him. She has known. He can see it in the precise fractional shift of her expression, not surprise at his discovery, not relief that he's finally catching up, but the focused attention of a woman who processed a thing hours ago and is now watching someone else encounter it for the first time. She is watching him learn. She is doing it with the patience of someone who understands that this particular understanding takes however long it takes, and that there is no way to accelerate it, and that attempting to would only damage it. She gives him the time. She watches him take it. The blast doors close behind the Falcon. The sound is enormous, and final in the way large mechanical things are final, without emphasis. Without drama, just the completion of a function that was always going to complete. Han Solo speaks quietly, with the particular resignation of a man who came into this docking bay carrying one set of assumptions and has run out of room to maintain them. So there's no rescue mission anymore. Is there. Leia does not turn. Her eyes stay on Luke. Her voice is level. There was never a rescue mission, she says. This is a summit. The meditation chamber holds 6 human beings, 1 Wookiee, and 19 years of catastrophic silence, and Obi-Wan Kenobi has been dreading this room since before the people in it were born. He stands near the door. Not tactical positioning, he has no illusions about what standing near the door would accomplish in this specific room, but habit, the habit of 35 years of active Jedi service, learning to assess exit routes without meaning to. The door is sealed. The chamber is pressurized. The life support pod stands open and inert against the far wall like a monument to everything that went wrong on a planet made of fire. Across the chamber, Lord Vader, standing in the way he always stands, not stillness, but suspension, the specific quality of enormous potential energy contained and waiting, the breathing marking seconds. Beside Vader, Leia Organa, who knows everything and has arranged her face accordingly. The face of a woman who has already performed the grief the rest of the room has not yet been permitted to reach. She is watching Han Solo, who is watching the distance between his right hand and his blaster with the expression of a man running continuous calculations and finding none of them favorable. Chewbacca occupies a corner with the particular quality of a Wookiee who has survived enough bad situations to recognize one and is reserving judgment. R2-D2, who came aboard the Falcon, and apparently no one thought to leave on the ship, issues a sequence of low tones that Obi-Wan's long experience with astromechs identifies as profound unease expressed in binary. And Luke. Luke stands in the center of the room and looks like what he is, 19 years old and fundamentally unprepared for the specific shape of what is coming, and aware of it, and trying very hard not to show it. He is looking at Vader, then at Obi-Wan, then at Vader again. The Force moves through him the way it moves through people who are about to receive information that reorganizes the structure of everything they believed about themselves. Obi-Wan has been watching this boy since Tatooine. He knows this look. He knows what comes after it. Vader turns to him. Tell them. One breath cycle of pause. Now. Everything. 4 words in the flat command register of a man who spent 20 years giving orders that required not compliance, but execution. The room's air shifts, a change in pressure that has nothing to do with the hyperbaric seal. R2 issues one alarmed tone and goes quiet. Obi-Wan Kenobi, former Jedi Master, former General, former Keeper of 2 children who were never supposed to meet each other, takes a breath. He tells them. He does not arrange it carefully. There is no careful arrangement available for what he is about to deliver, and he has spent enough years building careful arrangements to recognize when he has finally run out of materials. He tells them about Anakin Skywalker, not the sanitized distance of he was a good man, or the clean tragedy of he died before you were born. The full account. A boy from Tatooine with the highest midi-chlorian count ever recorded. A Padawan who was, without qualification, the most gifted Force user Obi-Wan ever trained, and the most frightened. A man who loved a woman and was afraid of losing her and was offered a door by the dark side and walked through it because the fear was louder than everything else. Because no one taught him, and Obi-Wan had been his teacher, and this is the specific agony he has carried, that no one taught him, that the thing you are most afraid of losing is not saved by the willingness to destroy everything else. He tells them about Pab Amidala. He tells them she died on Polis Massa in a medical facility cut from asteroid rock, in the hours after she gave birth to 2 children she was not well enough to name. He tells them she died with hope, that she said near the end that there was still good in him. He does not know if she was right. He has been uncertain about it for 19 years, and is somewhat less certain than he was this morning. He tells them she died believing in something, which is more than most people get, and he says it without sentiment because it does not require any. He tells them about the decision to separate them. He does not dress it as a strategy. It was a strategy, but he owes them the interior of it, the mathematics as he understood them then, the specific calculation of 2 children's lives weighed against the certainty of an emperor who would use them as instruments the moment he located them. 1 child placed in plain sight in the core under a name and a house that Vader would never associate with a hidden weapon. 1 child in obscurity on the outer rim, in a moisture farmer's home, under a name that was perhaps not as well concealed as it should have been. The 19 years of watching from a distance. The belief, he chooses the word carefully, because he owes them the precision, the belief that the Force would provide a path when the time came. He does not look at Luke while he says this. He cannot. He makes himself look at Luke when he finishes. Luke is not crying. He looks like a man who has found out that the building he grew up in was constructed on the foundation of someone else's decision, and is currently assessing which walls still bear weight. His eyes move between Obi-Wan and Vader and back again, running the arithmetic. His father is alive. His father is the shape in the armor. The shape in the armor has done everything the Empire says it has done, and arriving at the specific result that does not resolve into anything clean. He looks at Leia. Leia is already watching him. She watches him with the focused patience of someone who finished this arithmetic hours ago and understands that it cannot be hurried, only witnessed. She measures how fast she will need to move if he goes down. She does not look like a woman bracing for her own grief. She looks like a woman at work. I don't care that he's my father, she says. The Senate register. Calibrated, built for rooms where the wrong temperature costs lives. That's a personal fact in a political situation. And in political situations, personal facts are only relevant if you let them become leverage against you. What matters is that he commands this station and hates the Emperor. That makes him useful. The question is what he wants in exchange. Han, you're saying we ally with. I'm saying we survive. Luke. Leia. He's our. I know what he is. She does not look away from Obi-Wan when she says it. She is not saying it at Luke. She is saying it at the person in this room who needs to hear it most, and Obi-Wan receives it as it is intended, not as an accusation, but as a statement of the specific and irreducible cost of being wrong about something this large. Vader makes his offer once. He does not arrange it as an apology. He does not perform reunion or forgiveness or anything that requires an emotional register he has not operated in for 2 decades. He presents it as a transfer of operational control. They go to Coruscant. They enter the Emperor's palace. Palpatine dies. The Empire does not collapse. Collapse is not a plan, it is an outcome. And outcomes require management. But restructures without a Sith Lord at its head. The twins take position. Luke as Force authority in whatever order rises from the ruin of the old one. Leia as the political architecture that the Senate requires if it is going to function as more than a stage set for whoever holds the most guns. He will step aside. He says all of it in the same voice he says everything. Without inflection. Without the specific quality of hope. Obi-Wan listens. He has listened to this man across very different circumstances for a very long time. He speaks when Vader finishes. The rule of 2 exists because Sith Lords cannot share power, he says. Not as philosophy, as structure. 20 years of dark side immersion does not pass through a person without leaving specific tendencies. His instinct, even now, even in this room, will always tend toward domination. Not as a choice, as a gravity. He is not angry. Anger has not been available to him for some time. What he has instead is the exhausted authority of a man who watched this process happen once and is obligated to say so clearly. The dark side does not make clean alliances. I need you to understand that before you decide anything. Luke begins, Obi-Wan. I am not finished. He makes himself hold both of them. Leia first, because she will carry what comes next with less of the weight Luke will load onto it. Then Luke, because Luke deserves to have it aimed at him directly and not managed from a distance the way everything else has been managed. But I have been wrong before, he says. Catastrophically. About the most important things. I decided what was best for both of you before you were born, and I have spent 19 years watching the consequences of that decision walk around in the galaxy without knowing what they were. He stops. He takes a breath. So I will say my warning. I have said it. And then I will do what I should have done from the beginning. The chamber holds the pause. I will let you decide. The breathing fills the space. In and out. The metronome of a man who has been a weapon for 20 years, sitting in a room with the first people who have ever asked him what he wants to be instead. Han Solo. From the corner where he has been standing with his arms folded in the sustained posture of extreme philosophical objection, speaks with the resigned practicality of a man who already knows what his own answer will be, regardless of what he says next. Right. So the plan is, we team up with the galaxy's most dangerous murderer to kill an even worse murderer, in a weapon the size of a moon, in a room full of stormtroopers who mostly work for the first murderer. He looks around the chamber. Did I miss anything? A beat. Chewie roars. It is, unmistakably, agreement. Vader had told them it would come. He said it with the specificity of someone who knew the operational response pattern not from intelligence reports, but from proximity, from 2 decades of being the operational response. Palpatine would feel the betrayal. Not its details, not its architecture, but the earthquake of it. A Sith Lord committing treason on the Empire's most significant military installation registers in the dark side, the way a detonation registers in the ground. He would dispatch something fast, something built for exactly this category of problem. The program that produced such things had been hemorrhaging members for years. Attrition, rebellion, ambition, but it was not empty yet. He wants me retired. Vader had used the word without any detectable relationship to its implications. He will send inquisitors. Luke has been sitting with this for 3 hours in a corridor, outside the meditation chamber, on the floor with his back against the wall, not sleeping, which is not the same as resting. His lightsaber is at his hip. He has owned it for 4 days. He has held it in serious practice for approximately 6 of the last 72 hours, under Obi-Wan's instruction in the Falcon's cargo hold. He is aware that this is not adequate preparation for what is about to arrive. He is also aware that adequate preparation was not something the current circumstances were planning to offer him. Leia is 3 meters away, seated against the opposite wall, reading from a datapad pulled from the station's records, with the focused attention of a woman who has decided that productive use of time is the only form of composure available. Han is beside her, not reading anything, occupying his time being comprehensively unhappy about the situation in a way that expresses itself through stillness rather than complaint. Chewie, at the corridor's far end, has been making sounds at intervals that Obi-Wan says mean something in Shiriwook, something about exits. Obi-Wan says this is useful data. Luke is about to say something, he doesn't know what, something to fill the specific quality of the corridor air, which has the character of air in a space where people are waiting for something that is definitely coming, when the Force moves in him the way it has been moving since Tatooine. Preconsciously, ahead of thought, arriving in his body before it arrives in his mind. "We need to move," he says. 3 seconds later, the wall panel comes apart. Not a knock, not an announcement. A detonation from inside the maintenance access, a sharp explosive crack that sends panel fragments through the corridor at velocity, and then they are there. Both of them, moving with the specific quality of people who have been paid to end things quickly and have done it many times before. Their red lightsabers ignited simultaneously, a high, thin sound, a pitch that carried design in it rather than history, blades spinning into guard position with the fluid precision of a program that had spent years refining exactly this moment. Luke's lightsaber is in his hand. He does not remember drawing it. The blue blade is between him and the nearer figure, and he is not certain what happened in the interval between "we need to move" and this exact position with his feet where they are, and the Force still moving through him without asking his permission. Vader is already moving. He moves the way weather moves, not quickly, not dramatically, just as a fact of the environment that everything else must account for. He does not rush toward the threat. He intercepts it. 2 of the escort soldiers are wreckage before Luke registers that Vader has reached them. A third hits the corridor wall and stays there, held flat by something invisible, and then is no longer structurally intact. It takes roughly as long as it takes to exhale. Luke finds himself at Vader's back. Neither of them placed the other there. They are both simply there, because this is where the geometry of the fight put them, and what happens next is something Luke will spend a long time looking for language to describe, because the language for fighting beside someone you have known for 6 hours, who is also your father and is also the most feared being in the galaxy, and is also, apparently, a person the Force has decided you fight beside as a unit, that language does not exist yet. This corridor is making it necessary. Vader fights with precision that has nothing to do with speed. Every movement is the minimum required movement. Every strike travels the shortest path between its origin and its target. He has done this 10,000 times, and the 10,000 times are visible in him. In the economy of it, in the absolute absence of wasted motion, in the way he dismantles opponents the way erosion dismantles rock, not through force, but through the certainty that the process will complete, that the stone does not have the option of remaining. Luke fights with nothing that deserves to be called a style. He deflects a blaster bolt, and only knows he has done it when he hears it impact the opposite wall. He pushes at the closer of the 2 Inquisitors, with something that might be force and might be raw adrenaline converted into intent, and she staggers back 3 meters, and he doesn't know how much of that was him, and how much was something the Force decided to accomplish with his body, while he was occupied being 19 and entirely outmatched. His form is wrong. He knows it's wrong. Obi-Wan told him specifically what wrong looks like, and this is wrong, and it doesn't matter. Because the Force is being extraordinarily generous with the desperate tonight, and Luke qualifies. They cover the corridor in both directions. His left, Vader's right. His right, Vader's left. They have never done this before. Neither of them has established anything with the other beyond the contents of a single conversation in a sealed chamber 3 hours ago. And it works. That is the part Luke will carry out of this corridor, not the blaster fire or the red blades or the specific quality of terror that goes with fighting people specifically trained to kill Force users. The part he will carry is simpler and heavier than any of that. They fit. The Force knows them as a unit in a way that neither of them has had any time to build. He moves, and Vader moves, and the gap between them covers everything it needs to cover. And this is not coordination. It has no coordination in it. It is something older than coordination, and it has nothing to do with 19 years of absence, or the armor, or the breathing that marks the seconds, or any of the enormous complicated weight of everything that has happened in the last day. The most violent thing in this corridor is that simple, undeniable fact. One of the Inquisitors has made a calculation. She has assessed the corridor's combatants and identified the one without a lightsaber, without visible Force training, holding a blaster in a military grip that is competent but unremarkable. She has assigned this person to the category of vulnerabilities and turned toward her accordingly. Her twin blades spin into a converging pattern designed to close distance fast, offering no angle for a clean shot. This is a mistake. Leia has been watching the fight with the full allocation of her attention since the first second, cataloging, assessing, looking for the variable that matters. She has also been experiencing, with increasing frequency in the last 18 hours, something she has no vocabulary for yet, a fractional lead on events, a half-second in which the world moves slightly slower than it should, and she has time to respond to things she should not yet be able to respond to. Not a voice. Not a vision. Just a gap where there wasn't one before, and her body already moving into it. She shoots once. Center mass. While the Inquisitor's attention is on Luke, which means there is no defense to deal with, which means the bolt travels exactly where Leia aimed it. She does not find this significant. She is already reading the next variable in the corridor. Obi-Wan Kenobi and the remaining Inquisitor have taken their engagement to a secondary corridor where there is more room and fewer people whose survival needs to be factored into the geometry. The man is built for aggression, physically larger than Obi-Wan by a margin that most fighters would find relevant. His style, all forward pressure, all relentless advance, all the confidence of someone who has ended most of his fights by the simple act of not stopping. He presses Obi-Wan back down the corridor with his spinning blade and the absolute certainty of a predator who has categorized an older man and made the predictable set of conclusions about what that category means. Obi-Wan uses Soresu. He uses it the way you use the thing you have spent your entire life perfecting, without drama, without visible effort, with the serene mechanical economy of someone who understands that this form's only purpose is to be present precisely where the attack is, for precisely as long as the attack requires, until the attack has nothing left. His blade is always exactly where it needs to be. Not where it would look impressive. Where it needs to be. The Inquisitor's strikes are powerful, and they land on empty air and on blade edge, with the reliability of something that cannot change what it is. He is 57 years old. He has spent 19 of them on a desert planet, crouching in small rooms, standing in wind that scoured everything. His shoulders carry the specific quality of that particular exile. He is still Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Inquisitor pushes harder, the thing aggressive fighters do when the defensive form won't fracture, because pushing harder is the only tool they have that hasn't failed yet. He pushes until his timing slips by exactly a quarter second. Then, Obi-Wan steps forward once. One step. One movement. Minimum force required, and no more. The fight ends. The corridor is quiet in the specific way of a space where something large has just finished happening, and the air hasn't caught up with the fact yet. Han emerges from the doorway where he spent the last 8 minutes providing cover for Chewie, his blaster in his hand, and an expression working very hard at composure. He looks at the corridor, at the fallen Inquisitors, at Obi-Wan, who is breathing with the controlled effort of a man who will not acknowledge that the last 8 minutes cost him something. Palpatine sent them, Han says. Yes, Vader says, and there'll be more. Yes? A pause that the breathing fills. Then, But he cannot know yet that the children are alive. He sent this contingent for me, not for them. We have a window. Luke asks it before anyone else can reach it. How long? The breathing marks several seconds of corridor silence. Less than a day. CT-1034 has served in the 501st for 6 years. He knows 2 things about that service. The first is that you do not question Lord Vader's orders. The second is that Lord Vader has never, in 6 years of campaign, given an order that did not hold up afterward. These 2 facts have never required him to choose between them. Until this hangar. Until tonight. The summons arrives through standard battalion channels at 0447 station time. All active 501st personnel to the main hangar bay. No designation of purpose. No briefing materials. No advance notation of command structure. Crow has been in the 501st long enough to know what the absence of preamble means. He is suited and moving within 90 seconds. The main hangar bay is the size of several city blocks laid flat and covered with a ceiling 30 meters overhead. It was designed to hold capital ship components, full fighter wings, and the logistical infrastructure of a sustained military operation. What it holds tonight is 2,000 stormtroopers assembling in parade formation, and the sound of that assembly, the percussion of 2,000 pairs of boots finding their marks, the mechanical hiss of helmet seals, the complete absence of any human voice, is the specific sound of something large holding its breath. No one speaks before a Vader briefing. This is not written in any regulation. It is what people learn to do. Crow finds his position in the 501st's first company. Around him, faces he knows behind identical visors, men he has trained with and deployed with and eaten bad field rations with across 4 separate campaigns. Sergeant Mallon to his left, who has been in the 501st for 8 years and carries an authority that appears on no rank insignia. Specialist Tyree to his right, who is 23 years old and has been waiting 6 months for his first real deployment and is holding his rifle at an angle that betrays exactly how carefully he is, trying not to show that his hands are uncertain. The hangar's ambient sounds run underneath the assembled silence, the distant thrumming of the reactor, the mechanical whisper of ventilation, the recycled air of a space too large to warm. Lord Vader enters from the primary access corridor. The sound of his breathing arrives first, amplified slightly by the hangar's acoustics, not louder than it ever is, but present in the larger space as a specific architectural fact, a sound that takes the shape of the room it enters. 2,000 soldiers do not come to attention. They are already at attention. What they do instead is go quieter, which should not be possible, and is. He stands at the hangar's center. No podium, no amplification system beyond what his suit already provides. His voice, when it comes, carries through the space with the quality of something that has decided it will be heard and does not require confirmation. He does not give a speech. Crow has attended enough Imperial briefings to know the format, setup, objective, command structure, questions at the end if time permits. What Vader does instead is give information. He delivers it in the same voice he gives every order, without inflection, without the specific quality that asks for an emotional response from the men receiving it. The Emperor has ordered his execution. He says this first, the way you say a weather report, as operational data that changes the conditions on the ground. The Emperor has ordered the execution of individuals under his protection. The Emperor is not operating the Empire as a structure of governance, but as a personal instrument, a Sith religious authority built across decades on manufactured catastrophe and controlled violence. The Death Star is the most recent expression of that authority. It has already been aimed at a civilian population, and it will be aimed at another civilian population the moment the political calculation makes it convenient. He is not asking them to rebel. He says this clearly. He is asking them to do what they were always told they were doing. The hangar holds 2,000 men breathing in unison, which is a sound like the building thinking. From somewhere behind Crow, not from the 501st's core formation, from the outer ring of logistics and support personnel summoned alongside the rest, a voice. What do we do, Lord Vader? The breathing fills the interval between the question and the answer. Several full seconds of it. What you have always done, Vader says. You fight for order. You protect the weak. You follow the commander who has never left you on a battlefield. "Fight with me, or stand aside, but you will not fire on my children." My children. The phrase lands in the hangar the way a dropped weapon lands, with a sound both smaller than expected and impossible to ignore afterward. Crow has served under Vader for 6 years. He has never heard him use a first-person possessive for anything beyond tactical assets. He has never heard him use the word children in any register at all. The hangar processes this in collective silence. Approximately 40% of the assembled formation does not move when Vader moves. Crow watches them from his position and understands it is not that these men love the Emperor. He does not think most of them have formed strong opinions about the Emperor as a person. What they have is the chain of command, which is the only organizing principle that makes the job hold together, and Vader is asking them to break it. For some men, the chain of command is not a tool. It is a spine. Remove it, and they do not know how to stand. He does not hold this against them. He understands it completely. Tarkin's loyalists move toward the elevated sections. The overbridge. The command tier. The communications hub. The weapons override systems. The 501st moves differently. What follows in the station's corridors is not a battle in the sense of two armies meeting across a defined line. It is a building separating from itself, corridor by corridor, checkpoint by checkpoint, a faction that holds the hangar bays and main access routes, and critically the docking slip where the rebel freighter sits, against a faction that holds the station's elevated command architecture. Neither side has a front line. They have positions. They have objectives. They have the specific controlled violence of men who trained alongside each other and are now conducting, with professional precision, the minimum necessary engagement. Crow does not think about the strategy. He is not a strategist and has never pretended otherwise. He thinks about Lothal. 3 years ago, outside a processing facility on the planet's industrial northern continent, half of the 501st's second company walked into a kill zone that materialized in approximately 4 seconds from a position the intelligence briefing had rated as low probability. 12 men pinned behind inadequate cover, suppressing fire from 3 directions. The honest operational calculation, the cold, correct calculation that any commander running the numbers would produce, says you hold your position. You do not send more men into what is already a loss. You do not add casualties to casualties. Vader walked into the kill zone, not ordered in, not having run the numbers and found a different result. He simply stepped out of cover and walked forward with his lightsaber and went to the first man who could not move under his own power, and brought him back. Then went again. Then went again. He went until they were all out. He did not ask anyone's permission. He did not acknowledge that the calculation existed. Every man who had gone into that kill zone came out of it, and the only reason was that Lord Vader decided the calculation was wrong and acted on that decision with his body. Crow took a bolt to the shoulder plate on Lothal. He spent 3 weeks in a medical bay. He remembers with complete clarity what it felt like to watch Vader come back for him specifically, to be the 4th man out of 12, to be the one Vader reached on the 4th trip back into the fire, and he has never found language adequate to what that felt like, and has not wasted effort trying. He fights for Vader. He will fight for Vader against anyone the rest of his life. This is not ideology. This is not politics. This is the specific and irrefutable arithmetic of a man who went back when every calculation said not to, and the answer that arithmetic produces does not change regardless of what question you ask it. The answer is the same tonight as it was on Lothal. It will be the same on whatever surface comes after this one. Crow moves through the corridor and holds his position and does his job, and the station continues to separate from itself around him, and he does not find this complicated. Tarkin reaches Imperial Center at 0531 station time. He reports the mutiny with the specificity of a man who understands that the initial framing of a communication determines every subsequent exchange, and frames it accordingly: internal security action, contained factional dispute, non-command areas only. He uses the word mutiny once, clinically, without repetition, and lets the documentation do the precise work that language sometimes cannot. The response comes from the Emperor's personal channel. Not a representative, The channel itself, which in Tarkin's 20 years of navigating Imperial bureaucracy, means that someone is listening who does not need to identify themselves in order to make their presence understood. The communication is 3 words. We are aware. A pause, calibrated to ensure its meaning arrives correctly, and responding. Tarkin sets the comlink down on the command console. He is at this moment positioned precisely between 2 forces that both outrank him. One of them Sith in the traditional and operational sense. One of them apparently in the process of deciding to stop being Sith in a way that has so far involved 2 dead weapons officers and the disarmament of the galaxy's most significant military weapon. And neither of them is operating within his authority in any meaningful sense. He has managed impossible positions before. He has made his entire career from the methodology of locating the move that exists inside a situation that appears to have none. He begins locating it now. He begins in the precise internal language he uses for these assessments to negotiate. The open question is with whom, and toward what arrangement, and how much time the answer has to exist in before something considerably larger arrives and makes the question irrelevant. He does not know yet. He begins finding out. In the original history, she never stands here. The throne room she eventually reaches. Years later, she comes to as a general, with allies and an army, and still almost loses. In this history, she comes with her father and her brother and a Wookiee who has lived through worse. She is not asking the room's permission. The shuttle's transponder has been broadcasting their names on every Imperial channel since they cleared the Alderaan system. Leia made this decision. She presented the reasoning to Vader with the specificity she brings to all operational decisions. An infiltration attempt against the Emperor's citadel would fail. He has had time to prepare, 12 hours at minimum, enough for a man who has governed through paranoia for 20 years to layer his defenses accordingly. The palace is built from the inside out to resist exactly the kind of insertion that worked on the Death Star. Every maintenance corridor has been Palpatine's architecture since before the Empire had a name. The only play is to make the approach impossible to misread. An arrival of consequence. A declaration. Vader had not argued. He had looked at her for a moment with the specific quality of someone recognizing a tactic they would have used themselves, and then he turned to the flight controls and entered the Coruscant coordinates, and that had been the end of the discussion. So their names go out on every frequency. Vader, Leia Organa, Senator of Alderaan, Luke Skywalker, on military channels and civilian bands and the Imperial news frequencies that the Empire controls entirely, and has always controlled entirely. On the planetary approach network, on the senatorial communication grid, which Leia knows the access codes for because she has used them since she was 14 years old, and has never needed to think carefully about why she was allowed to. The response from Coruscant is not silence. It is something more specific than silence, the sound of a planet in the process of becoming uncertain. Through the viewport, Skylane traffic echelon by echelon peels back from their approach vector, hundreds of civilian craft clearing without visible instruction, the way crowds clear from something they don't yet have a name for. A signal drops off a frequency, then another. The particular quality of a city planet that has always been noise discovering it does not know what sound to make about this. Coruscant at night from approach altitude is light in every direction. Towers and infrastructure and the specific glow of 10 trillion beings living in a structure built over thousands of years. It looks permanent. The permanent things always look that way until they don't. Leia watches it and calculates what it will look like after tonight, and keeps the calculation to herself. The Red Guard moves like something that knows it is a symbol and has decided that symbols can kill. 12 of them in the first approach corridor of the Imperial Palace's inner wing, arranged in the specific pattern of people positioned to direct rather than block. Leia reads the deployment the way she reads Senate floor arrangements. It tells her what the person who designed it wanted. The spacing says funnel. The positioning says, allow approach to the throne room, but make it cost something. The Emperor is not trying to kill them in his corridors. He has had hours to decide he wants them in the throne room, where his power is concentrated, where the optics of turning them serve his purposes better than bodies on polished stone. He believes he can use them. He believes they can be turned, at least partially, at least enough. He may be right about Luke. He is not right about her. She does not think he has thought carefully about her yet, which is a mistake she has watched powerful men make once. Vader walks into the Red Guard with the weariness of a man doing something he has done many times in this building and found no satisfaction in at any point along the way. She sees it in how he moves, not slow, not hesitant, but carrying a specific quality of accumulated cost that has nothing to do with the fight in front of him and everything to do with the address. He has killed in this palace before. He is not glad to be doing it again. The Red Guard are lethal, and they die anyway, because the thing that makes Vader lethal is not his size or the blade. It is the complete and total absence of hesitation, what remains when you have already lost everything you were afraid to lose and have spent 2 decades making decisions from that specific residue. The first corridor clears. They move. Something is happening in the edges of Leia's perception that she does not have a framework for yet. It began on the Death Star, a half-second lead on events, a fractional gap where there wasn't one before, but here, in this palace, in a building that has been the Emperor's primary force-active environment for 20 years and carries that saturation in every corridor and surface, it is no longer fractional. It is a full second. It is the distance between what she can see and what she can feel, and it is widening. They move through the second antechamber. Red Guard responds from a side passage she hadn't seen with her eyes. Left, she says. She has not made the conscious decision to speak before the word is already in the corridor. Luke goes left. The guard's strike hits the space where Luke was. Luke turns and looks at her with an expression that is going to require more time than she currently has. She looks at her own hand. It had pointed before she decided to point. She does not build a theory about this. She is a senator and has spent her entire adult life being exact about the difference between what she knows and what she doesn't know. What she knows, this is happening. What she doesn't know yet, what it is. She files it as an asset. Whatever it is operational. She will examine it when the war is over and there is time for examination, and she keeps moving. Luke is still looking at her. Later, she says. He nods. He keeps moving. She notices it before anyone else does, which is what happens when you spend your entire political career watching powerful people in corridors and learning to read what their bodies do when they think no one is measuring. Vader is not moving at the same speed as before. Each step toward the final approach corridor, the one that terminates at the throne room's blast doors, is fractionally heavier than the last. Not in the mechanics of it. She watched him fight tonight, and the body is intact, the suit undamaged beyond what it carried in before they boarded the shuttle. The weight is elsewhere. It is in the architecture of the step rather than the machinery of it, located somewhere behind the suit rather than inside it. In whatever is making the direction of travel cost more with each additional meter. She understands it before she has the language for it. He has served this man for 20 years. Every structure he built on the ruins of Anakin Skywalker, every certainty, every function, every organizing principle that made the armor and the breathing and the absolute absence of attachment make sense as a way to exist, was built from Palpatine's architecture. Palpatine designed the replacement. He handed a cage to a man in total grief and agony on a medical table on Coruscant and called it power and called it purpose, and the man held on to it because it was all there was left to hold. For 20 years the cage had been load-bearing. You cannot remove a load-bearing structure without first deciding what will hold the weight instead. Vader has had 24 hours to make that decision. 24 hours and a daughter he did not know existed, and a son he almost missed, and a corridor that is getting shorter with every step. Especially because the cage was the only home he had. That is the part that costs the most. She understands this the way she understands most things, not emotionally, not yet, but structurally, the way a building understands what it's built on. She reaches back and takes his armored wrist. He stops. Luke and Han and Chewie move ahead several paces and then stop too, and the corridor holds its breath in the way corridors do when everyone in them is listening to something that isn't being said yet. She looks up at the mask. She does not perform softness she isn't feeling. She does not arrange her face into something he needs it to be. She does not give him anything she hasn't decided to give. "I'm not asking you to do this for me," she says. The Senate Register. The voice she built for rooms that only respond to precision. I'm not forgiving you. You don't get to walk into a redemption arc the way other people walk into a room. She holds his wrist, and she does not look away from the dark of the mask, and she does not look for a response in it, because she is not delivering a sentiment and does not need one returned. But if you stop here, he wins. And everyone I have ever loved is dead. So I'm asking you to do it for that. Just that. She lets go of his wrist. He moves. The blast doors of the Emperor's throne room open the way blast doors open, with mechanical certainty, with the specific finality of a function that has completed itself, as if the building has simply decided that the next thing will happen now and is not interested in ceremony about it. No announcement, no harmonic charge, no dramatic amplification of the moment. Just the doors, parting, inside, dim light, the specific quality of a room lit to make everything outside its windows feel like backdrop. A high chair facing the stars of Coruscant which spread across the transparent steel in all their vast and permanent-looking abundance, and an old man in black, already seated, already turned toward them, already smiling. He is smiling. Palpatine descends from his throne the way he does everything, with the unhurried certainty of a man who decided, at some point long ago, that time exists for him rather than the other way around. He does not stand to receive them. That would imply guests, and what they are is a category of problem he has managed before, in various configurations. Across a career that spans the destruction of a republic and the construction of an empire from its wreckage. He is smiling because he has already decided how this ends. He goes to Vader first. Of course he goes to Vader first. Vader is the one he conditioned longest, rebuilt most thoroughly, whose pain he has the most practiced relationship with. The lightning arrives not as an opening attack, but as a reminder, a re-establishment of a dynamic that has governed 20 years of existence. The message is simple. The pain is extraordinary. It has always worked before. Vader walks into it. His suit systems register catastrophic warnings the moment the first arc reaches him, secondary power failing, tertiary life support activating. The specific cascade that means the machinery keeping him alive is beginning to lose the argument with something it was not designed to withstand. He is burning inside the armor. This is not metaphor. He is burning the way he has burned since Mustafar, and the difference is that on Mustafar the burning was the end of something, and here it is the cost of something, which is a different category entirely. He keeps walking. I have already died, he says. His voice carries through the suit's failing systems without shaking. I died on Mustafar, and I died on Polis Massa, and I died every year of the last 20 without knowing I was still dying. What you see is not a man you can break with pain, my master. I have already been broken. I am something that was broken long ago and kept in a box. One more step. The lightning intensifies. Another system goes. And what I have learned, tonight, after 19 years, is that broken things can still move toward light. He reaches Palpatine. He takes the lightning with his body. He does not strike, not yet, not his function. He has always known this is not the killing blow. He has never been the killing blow, and this understanding has not felt less like failure in any moment more than it does in this one. His function is to hold the most powerful Sith Lord in history exactly here, long enough for his children to act. He does that. He is losing. This is not imprecision. He is 19 years old and 6 weeks from a moisture farm and fighting the most powerful Sith Lord in recorded history on whatever qualifies as the man's best day, and he is losing in the specific non-metaphorical sense that the distance between his blade and Palpatine's counter is shrinking with each exchange, and he has nothing left in reserve that he knows the name of. His technique is not a technique. It is instinct and desperation and the Force being inexplicably generous, and against 70 years of refined Juyo it is, in the honest, operational sense, not enough. Palpatine says, "Your father is dying." He delivers it with the warmth of a man sharing a compassionate truth. He is looking at Luke with the specific attention of someone who has built his career on identifying exactly what people will sacrifice everything to avoid. You cannot prevail, but you can survive this. You have a choice. In the original story, This temptation comes years later, after training, after grief, after he has built something worth protecting. Here it arrives early, unfinished, with nothing yet built. He almost wavers, not because Palpatine is persuasive, because he is telling the truth about everything except the choice. 3 seconds. Luke holds his guard and looks at his father burning across the throne room and thinks, I cannot. I cannot. I am not. Leia steps up beside him. She does not have a lightsaber and is not looking for one. She has something in her hand that is not a weapon, and she is looking at the room the way he has watched her look at every room since he met her, like it is a problem with a structure and the structure has a solution. Leia. I see it, she says. 30 seconds. The theater is what everyone has missed. She sees it from the moment she enters. The lighting calibrated for maximum psychological displacement, the throne's elevation, the positioning of the chair against the Coruscant skyline to make the stars his backdrop, the specific quality of the robes and the title and the lightning. All of it is construction. All of it is a 70-year performance of inevitability. And the people in this room who are fighting him are fighting the performance as if it is a force of nature. Performances can be interrupted. She moves to the nearest wall panel. She knows where the communication pickup is because she has spent 26 hours studying the Death Star's schematics, and the Imperial Palace shares its communication architecture, and she has been thinking about this specific panel for the last 8 minutes of corridor. She opens every channel available to her. Senate access codes, which still work, which means no one thought to revoke them, which is the kind of administrative oversight that ends empires. His name is Sheev Palpatine, she says. Her voice goes out on every frequency she can reach. Civilian, military, Imperial news, Senate communication grid, planetary broadcast, the open holocam pickups transmitting everything in this room to every screen that is currently wondering what is happening in the Emperor's palace. He was a senator of Naboo. He manufactured the Clone Wars to become Chancellor. He engineered genocide to become Emperor. He is not inevitable. He is just old. And he is dying in a room that everyone in the galaxy can see, if they look. Palpatine turns. She has not seen this on his face in the 30 seconds she has occupied the same room with him. Not calculation. Fury. The specific fury of a performance interrupted mid-climax by something it had not scripted and cannot absorb without fracturing the fourth wall. His attention leaves Vader. His attention leaves Luke. For 3 seconds his full attention is on her, which is the gap, which she built this move to create. She goes for the object resting in the alcove at the throne room's edge. A scepter of office she had identified in the Imperial Archive, records that Vader's cipher clearance unlocked 3 days ago. Decorative, it was presented as, in every ceremonial document. In the palace's own security protocols, buried 3 layers down, it was something more specific, the physical carrier of the Emperor's personal authentication seal. A master key disguised as ceremony, because that was the kind of redundancy Palpatine built into everything he touched. She had been intending to reach it since they walked through those doors. She takes it in both hands. She breaks it. Not elegantly, not with precision or technique, with her whole body and everything she has. Force and fury and 19 years of a planet she loves, being used as the stage set for an empire she did not choose, and the sound it makes when it goes is ceramic shattering in a room built for stone, which is the most inadequate sound for what it represents and does not matter, because the scepter is in pieces, and the authentication seal is in pieces, and in the thing she has no language for. Yet she feels the room change in its foundations. The lightning stutters. Vader's hand closes. His lightsaber drives through Palpatine from the front. Face to face. Not from behind, not with his back turned. The way Anakin Skywalker was trained to fight, facing what he is doing. Looking at it. Not turning away from what it costs. Palpatine falls. The dark side does not evacuate the room with a rush of wind or a flash of light. It does not announce itself leaving. The room simply becomes quieter, in the specific way of a place that has been holding something for a very long time and has finally been allowed to set it down. Vader goes to one knee. The suit's cascade arithmetic has been running since the lightning first reached him, and it is completing now, Secondary systems finished, tertiary systems in their final sequence, the machinery that has kept him alive for 20 years performing its last accounting. He has always known these numbers. He knew them when he took the first step into the lightning. He took the step anyway, which is what the numbers were for. He reaches up. The damaged servo joint in his arm moves with a mechanical whir, and then stops, reserve power depleted, his hand not quite reaching the helmet seal. He gets his fingers to the edge and then the joint gives entirely. Leia reaches up and finishes it. She does not step back. She does not perform hesitation. She takes hold of the helmet and lifts it clear, and she does it with the same unsentimental practicality she brings to everything that needs doing, and Anakin Skywalker's face is in the dim light of the throne room, and she looks at it the way she looked at it in the meditation chamber, cataloging what survived the burning, reading the damage, noting what the structure can still bear. He looks at her. "Your mother," he says. "She would have." He does not finish it. There is no ending to that sentence that does not become 20 years of accumulated loss, and there is no time, and Leia is looking at him with the expression of a woman who already knows every ending to that sentence exists, and has made her own accounting of them all, privately, in the hours before this room, in the way she does everything, thoroughly and without asking for help. "Don't make this a beautiful moment," she says. "Not soft, not cold, specific, which is what he deserves. You don't get that from me, but you can die with your family present. That is what you get." He looks at her. He does not argue. He understands. She can see that he understands. Exactly what she is offering and exactly what she is not, and he takes what is offered and does not reach for what isn't. She gives him that much. She does not look away while he takes it. Luke takes his hand. He says nothing. He is, as he has been throughout all of this, Leia's emotional counterweight, the one who needs this to mean something complete, and is in the process of finding out that it means something true instead, which is not the same shape, and is considerably harder to hold. He lets it be incomplete. He holds his father's hand, and lets it be exactly what it is, and nothing more, and nothing less. Anakin Skywalker dies. Not as a redeemed hero. Not as a monster. As a man who was destroyed completely and did one enormous right thing at the very end of a life full of catastrophic wrong, and the one right thing was sufficient to matter, even if it was not sufficient to settle the account, because some accounts do not settle, and this is one of them, and the Force receives him anyway. The room is quiet. Han Solo, from the doorway where he has been standing with his blaster in his hand since Palpatine fell, speaks with the specific quality of a man marking an occasion that has no precedent in his experience. "Is it over?" Leia looks at her father's face, at what the burning left, at the specific quality of stillness that is not rest, but is at least finished. "This part," she says. The Senate chamber has approximately 60% of its pods occupied. This is not a triumph. It is not the triumphant assembly of a victorious rebellion, and Leia did not frame the invitation as one, because she is a senator and she knows that halls like this respond to precision rather than inspiration. And the worst thing she could do to this institution right now is make it feel like a victory gathering for one faction's preferred outcome. What she sent was a procedural summons. Standard Senate format. Evidence attached. Request for emergency session. That is what most of them responded to, the familiar machinery of their own institution, still functioning, asking them to come and do what they were elected to do. Most of them came. Not all. Some were too deeply embedded in the old structure, some had already moved to systems where accountability had not yet arrived, some would spend the next several years being the reason the work remained unfinished. But most of them came, and the chamber holds them at 60% with the specific acoustic quality of a large space accustomed to more people than it currently contains, every empty pod a specific and audible absence, the institution's own echo pointing at the places where it used to be fuller. Luke left an hour ago. She had seen him in the corridor outside, dressed in nothing that announced a particular allegiance, carrying no lightsaber she could see. He had looked at her with the expression of a man who understood where she was going and what she was going to do, and had no place in it, not because he wasn't capable, but because it wasn't what he was built for, and they are both clear enough about the distinction to let it be what it is. She had let him go. This is not a concession. It is accurate reading of what each of them is for, which is not the same thing, which is the only reason any of this works. She knows where he is. She can feel it, the force, still sharpening, still without adequate vocabulary, the specific location of her brother somewhere in the wind above a city that is slowly and confusedly trying to understand what it woke up in. She presents the evidence. This is what halls like this respond to, not the poetry of it. 3 days with Vader's cipher clearance and the Death Star's archive systems, and what she found is the opposite of poetry. It is receipts. Financial engineering going back 40 years. Senate procedural manipulations recorded in committee logs that no one was supposed to examine closely because no one was supposed to survive long enough to care. Communication records between parties whose names, placed in the same sentence, produce a reordering of what anyone believed they understood about the last 2 decades of galactic history. She names names. She shows every record she unlocked. She says exactly what was done and exactly who did it, and she says it in the language of Senate procedure, motions, evidence, record, so there is no question that what is happening in this chamber is unambiguously legal, is unambiguously the institution functioning as it was designed to function. Not a victor's tribunal, not a revolutionary court, a deliberative body in possession of evidence, making a documented determination. What she proposes is not a Rebel Alliance victory. She says this specifically, in those words, because several of the faces in these pods need to hear it said that way before they can hear anything else. She proposes a constitutional protectorate. Civilian oversight with structural authority. Military command returned to civilian accountability. A reformed Senate with safeguards built against the specific vulnerabilities Palpatine exploited, the emergency powers mechanism, the committee architecture, the conditions under which a single office can accumulate what was designed to be distributed. And a truth commission, not retribution performed as a demonstration of power, but documented accountability for Empire-era crimes, conducted in public, on the record, with the evidence she has already compiled as its foundation. There is objection. Of course there is. 60% capacity means 60% of the galaxy's political complexity arrived in one room, and complexity does not simplify because an emperor has died. She addresses each objection with the evidence. She does not perform patience. She has actual patience, built from 19 years of watching a galaxy she loved be used as a stage set for someone else's project, and deciding, in those years, that if she ever had a different stage she would use it correctly. The resolution passes. The Falcon's landing gear makes a specific sound against the platform surface when the wind shifts, a metallic settling, the ship redistributing its weight. Luke has been standing in this wind for 40 minutes. He has noticed the sound approximately 20 times and found it reassuring in a way he cannot explain, which is the kind of thing that happens when you are 19, and the last week of your life has contained more than most lives contain in their entirety. Obi-Wan finds him there. They stand for a while without speaking, looking at a city planet going about the first morning of figuring out what it is now, which means it looks almost identical to every other morning, and only the frequencies are different. News channels running the same footage on repeat, skylane traffic slightly less certain in its patterns, 10 trillion beings who were told something last night and are still deciding what it means. What do I do now? Luke asks. Obi-Wan is quiet for long enough that it is not a pause, but an answer in process. What Jedi have always done when they get the answer wrong, he says. Build something better. Not the old order. No, not the old order. The wind moves between them. Something that doesn't hide children. Something that doesn't separate families. Something that understands the Force is not separate from attachment, that it is made of it. Luke watches the city. The places where the evidence presentation is visible on public screens from this altitude, the Senate chamber, the documents, Leia's face in front of a room that is listening to her in the way rooms listen to people who are saying the true thing precisely. You failed to teach him that, he says. A very long pause. Yes, Obi-Wan says. They stand in the wind until the city starts coming back to life around them, the skylane patterns finding their rhythm again, the frequencies settling into something that resembles the ordinary 10 trillion beings, arriving at the practical conclusion that they still need to eat and move through their lives regardless of what fell last night in a room most of them will never see. The Death Star she addresses last. Before he died, Vader gave one order that was not about the fight in the throne room. He gave it to the 501st through the station's command channel, routed through Crow's authentication, and the order was simple: take the station out of combat service. The 501st is escorting it now to a dead system in the Outer Rim, and Crow's after-action report, which she has read twice, uses the word honored in a context she had not expected military documentation to contain. What she proposes to the Senate is not its destruction. She proposes permanent decommissioning. The superlaser systems stripped and rendered inert, the specifications sealed under the Truth Commission's authority. The station itself remains, stands in orbit around a dead star where anyone can see it, which is the point. Not erased, not buried. Present, a monument to what the Empire built and what it aimed at, and the specific category of power it believed it had the right to exercise over the people it was supposed to serve. There are people alive today who watched Alderaan almost die and don't know yet why it didn't. There will be people born a generation from now who will see that station in historical records and grow up knowing it was built, and that it was stopped, and that stopping it cost something enormous and specific. She wants the cost visible. She wants the shape of what was aimed at living people to remain where living people can look at it. She does not want the galaxy to have the option of forgetting what this was. The Senate records this as the Alderaan Resolution. Tarkin's role in the new structure is documented in the same session. He negotiated, he was always going to negotiate. Which is the consistent thing about Tarkin: he is not ideological, he is methodological, and methodology adapts to available conditions. He retains a position in the reformed military administration, stripped of Grand Moff authority, reporting to a civilian committee rather than to a single executive office. He knows how the imperial infrastructure functions at a level that almost no other living person does, and they need someone who knows it in order to dismantle the parts that require dismantling and preserve the parts that hold anything useful together. He will spend the next 30 years being exactly as useful as the reformed structure allows him to be. He is already working out how to make that enough. She can see him doing it from the gallery where he sits as a witness rather than a participant, running the new model, mapping its limits, identifying where the leverage points are in an institution that was specifically designed to distribute them. She respects it. She does not trust it. She doesn't need to trust it. She needs to build something that functions even when the people inside it are doing precisely what Tarkin is doing, using it for their own purposes within the constraints of what it permits. That is what functional institutions accomplish. They constrain the worst and allow the rest, and hold long enough for the next generation to improve them. This is not inspiration. This is governance, and she has wanted to do it correctly her entire life, and today she begins. In the original history, she never knows. She loses her world in the time it takes a star to exhale. She works through grief the way soldiers work through campaigns, by not stopping. She wins a war. She loses a son. She carries a title she never wanted in a galaxy that never stops asking more of her. She dies on a planet called Crate, in a burning cave, having given everything and found out it wasn't enough. In this history, the war still comes. There are always people who resist peace, who see a power vacuum as an invitation, who decide that the removal of one emperor means the opportunity for another. They will come for her. She knows this. She has always known this. But they will come for her when she has her family. They will come for her when she has a Senate that has seen the evidence. They will come for her when her brother is building something in the Outer Rim that understands the Force as a living, breathing, relational thing, rather than a sword to be polished. And, for the first time in her life, Senator Leia Organa of a house that still stands will have both the weapon and the reason not to use it first. That is the story of the Skywalker bloodline. Finally, bringing balance, not through peace, through the absolute and irreversible destruction of the thing that made peace impossible. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.